We're going to slow it down a bit. I have 5 slides, 60 lines of PowerShell. I am not a PowerShell expert. I am not somebody who just does PowerShell for a living. I'm a database guy. And I have interesting problems with databases and SQL Server. I run into some other databases from time to time, but mostly SQL Server. I'm a SQL Server MVP, or Data Platform MVP, as it's called these days. And I work for a bank in the Netherlands, mainly. I do other stuff, but it's mostly the bank where I run around for the fraud and compliance team. So the databases are interesting. I cannot tell you what's inside the databases, not allowed. But we can, if you like geeking about with data, I have some examples there that we can talk about. So I'm also Dutch. You may have got from the accent. I keep saying this at conferences because I keep getting the question. If you have any questions about the Netherlands, I have never in my life been inside a coffee shop. I don't know how that works. I don't smoke, so no idea. There's a few things I know. It's not just legal in Amsterdam. We have them everywhere, these coffee shops. And we have a smoking ban in public places. So that is a bit weird when you have a coffee shop to run, right? What do you do? So we have an amendment to our law that says you are allowed to smoke cannabis inside a coffee shop. Not normal cigarettes. That would be illegal. I always imagine the government person responsible for checking if there's smoking going on in public places, walking into a coffee shop and going, is that a normal cigarette? I bet he'd get thrown out the window or something, I don't know. So, a bit of an introduction. Like I said, I'm a database guy, and I moved some of my databases from on-prem to Azure SQL DB. And that was an interesting exercise in itself. But the first thing that went missing is the SQL Server agent. Couldn't schedule anymore, right? Now what? So then you find some PowerShell, because I use PowerShell for everything, right? Nothing there? Okay, let me write some PowerShell. I write ugly PowerShell, and I write even more uglier PowerShell, and I also contribute to some open source libraries, and that taught me how to write somewhat pretty PowerShell, because their tests just fail if I write ugly PowerShell. So this is how I learned a bit. But I fix problems and then go on with my work. And one of the things I needed to fix a lot of times, because it kept breaking, was my scheduling. Do something in SQL Server at night. Rebuild an index or copy a table or something. I just had a little, that's like a one-liner in PowerShell, right? Invoke SQL command, here's the script with the code, run it on that database, done. Right, not in Azure. If you're on-prem and you have a SAN and Hyper-V or VMware or whatever virtualization layer, everything is outsourced to all these departments, right? And they have the opportunity to move your SQL Server around. We hate that, but they can. They can do vMotion or live migration, depending on which virtualization platform you're on. As a database guy, I get really angry when they do that during the day, right? What just happened? Why is this thing slow? Well, we've decided to move everything to another. It's fine. Your server gets busy, we just move it to one that's not busy. Okay, it's busy for a reason. Leave it alone when it's busy, please, right? You can move it when it's not busy. That might work. So I have a lot of arguments with the admin group. I fight a lot with SAN admins. Okay, very old Star Wars reference. SAN people are scared easily, but they'll soon be back and in bigger numbers. Yeah, nobody? Only the old people are going, that was funny. This is the original Star Wars, never mind. Once you move to Azure, all bets are off. Microsoft does not listen to you. If they want to move your SQL Server, they will. If they want to move your VM that you've installed SQL Server on, they are gonna. You cannot tell them not to do that. You can tell them little things like, if you're patching that thing, and I have 2 of them, don't patch both at the same time. That's the kind of stuff you can do. But for an Azure SQL database, even the really expensive ones, they disappear. Yeah, sometimes they're just gone. We have one that is a P11. This is what, 100,000 euros a year or something for a SQL database, and it just disappears on me. Every 2 weeks, I lose it for a minute, maybe 2. Yeah. Yeah, that happens. So this is an online auction firm, and they have bids going on something, and they then have to calculate whether you're the highest bidder and whatnot. It's really not a good idea to not have that thing available, right? That was an interesting surprise. But count on this. If you're going to Azure SQL DB, sometimes it won't be there. Could be a second, could be a few seconds, but with most applications, anything past 30 seconds might mean a timeout, right? So you have to reschedule or redo your transaction, and your error messages are all going to be different. You're going to see the craziest error messages that you've never seen before on-prem. I've learned some really interesting new error messages. Okay, what is this? I've never heard of it. They're all called Transient Errors, and then something. But retry is very important. So I schedule something in PowerShell, and it fails. So I think, I'm going to build in a retry. Then I figure out that if you retry it right away, it would just still fail. We've had, even the developers had this, where on their web application, they just built in retries, and they had 10,000 users on it. The Azure SQL DB disappears. What happens? The web servers start retrying with 10,000 at the same time. So you get error messages like running out of IP addresses or something, running out of threads towards some firewall, the internal firewall in Azure somewhere. You get interesting stuff. So you have to do things like, something fails, try it again. If that fails, wait 3 seconds. This is an eternity if you have an online auction firm to run, but wait for 3 seconds. Try again, still fails. Wait for 30 seconds. Try again. If that fails, wait for 5 minutes. Try again. If that fails, warn somebody, not before. This was something that I had to get used to. This was weird. I do the most simple thing at night with my code. Log on to the SQL server in Azure, make a copy of the database at night. The easiest way to do a data warehouse, just make a copy of yesterday. This is not very complicated what these guys are doing. No fact tables, no dimension tables. I'm not even going to bore you with what that is. They just copy the database of production into something they can run a bunch of queries on the next day, so they don't overload the production system, right? Management queries. That fails once a week. Seriously, once a week. I send to the Azure SQL database, create database blah as copy of blah. That's all you have to do. That's a query you send to this thing, and it makes a copy of your database. And once a week, it just says nope. After 30 minutes of thinking about it, it just goes, nah. And then if I try again right away, it goes disconnected. Okay, and then I wait 10 seconds, reconnect, and go try it again. Waits for a minute, again goes, I'm still doing the previous operation. No, you're not. You just told me it failed. Interesting stuff happens. So let me show you some code before I'm just doing stories the whole time. Where are we? Ooh, here we go. What I've got. What I've made in the end, let me zoom a bit. This is just an example. But I've created a config file where I can put my commands in. I did this myself because I had to reinvent some stuff. And I just said, okay, I want to run this. And this is called a YAML file, in case you've never seen this. This is called a YAML file. It's being used for configurations a lot more these days. How do you read these things? Let me go to the code. It's maybe easier to start with the code. Am I up there? A YAML file is related to JSON. All you need is a library called, what's it called? YAML something. That wasn't very useful. I'll look it up in a sec. Sorry? It's not PowerYAML, but there's a couple of them, but they all do the same thing. And the one I'm using can convert to JSON because it's related to JSON. The config is similar. The language is similar. JSON is a configuration for computers, but if you've ever tried to write a JSON file, right? Do I need brackets or does a comma? I'm not sure. Or 2 brackets, maybe a comma? No, that's not it either. It's horrible, right? So JSON is human readable and it's meant for human maintenance. You do the typing in the YAML file. This is what you do. So if you have something that a human needs to configure, YAML is a good option. Be careful though. It is very sensitive to spaces. Spaces mean something, so it might surprise you there. I still fight with it all the time, but I like it for a config sense. Now, what you do, here we are. Here, you do get content from the YAML file. You pipe that in to convert YAML to JSON. That comes with the YAML library that I'm using. Then we have JSON, and then you just do convert from JSON, which turns it into a PowerShell object. That just reads your whole config and turns it into a PowerShell object that we can use in PowerShell from now on. Perfect. I can start using stuff. Now, what am I doing with it? Well, my commands are in here. I want to run stuff. This is why it's called run stuff, the PS1. Very bad at naming. I yell at developers if they get the table names wrong, and then I just call my stuff run stuff. So I want to run some commands. And I have a type there and a name, but then I have an invoke. This one is important because I want to invoke something later. And what I don't want to do is for every type of command that I want to run a query, zip a file, send a file, do something with the result of the query, maybe send it to Excel, mail it, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I want to do inside my schedules, but I don't want to have sections in my PowerShell that go, okay, if your command was run a query, then run this part of PowerShell, this piece of PowerShell, and if your command was then you get, because my first script looked like that, run a query from a query, then run this piece of PowerShell. If I want to run a query from a file, then run this piece of PowerShell. Lots of if, then. It was impossible at some time. So I was looking for a way to make it easier. Why doesn't it just take this config file and do what it says in there, right? Without all the PowerShell. So I've got 2 here. I've got invoke DBA SQL query, and another one here, DBA SQL query. These commands, by the way, they come from a PowerShell library called DBA tools. If you work with SQL Server, if you have a SQL Server anywhere, use DBA tools. It has 100 million commands or something. These, yeah, or 410. Simple example. I have a database which the backup is too big to go to one mount point. So I have to split the backup up. It goes to 2 separate locations. They've also split it up in 4 files. So now I have, or 8 files. Now I have 4 files there, 4 files there. And this goes for the full backup, for the differentials, and all the logs. All the logs are in 8 pieces and in 2 locations as well. So when I want to restore a bunch of databases back to a server, I have 10,000 files or something to restore in 2 locations. DBA tools, dir, that directory, comma, that directory, pipe, restore DBA SQL database, this instance, you figure it out. And it just grabs all the files, restores all the headers to look what's in it, then makes the least possible list that it can do, so the latest backup, the latest diff, and all the logs that come with it, and starts restoring. 1 line of code. I think I can fire a junior DBA just for that. Right? Don't need you anymore. Bye. You could say, okay, what about the GUI? Because you can do the restore from the GUI. Not if it's to a database that doesn't know anything about the restore, the backup history, right? If it's a different database. Anyway, I have non-database people in the room looking, what? But if you ever use databases, go use DBA tools. Brilliant stuff. Now, this is an example with a database thing that I want to run, but basically the invoke is just a PowerShell command. Any PowerShell command. Doesn't matter. If you have different commands that you run, fine. And I have a bunch of parameters that are related to my PowerShell command that I want to run. So I have server instance, database, query, or I could do file name instead of query. So it picks up the file name from the query from the file instead of from the query that I type in here. And I have a couple of interesting things here, like retry and retry wait. And I have a retry and an exponential backoff 2,10 here. Those are not related to the PowerShell command that I want to run. Those are related to the stuff I do in my script. So I have to distinguish between these two, which ones belong to my command and which ones don't. And I have to run this command with these parameters here. That's my goal, right? And it shouldn't matter what I type in here. I don't want to invent something new here and then have to go over to my PowerShell script and start typing the if and the where and the else and all the parameters. I want to do something smarter. So I said smarter. I hope you find it smarter as well. We'll see. What I'm doing, I am using a technique called splatting. You may have heard about this in PowerShell before, but this is my go-to technique here. What I'm doing is I am building an array here that says no splat, and I put in all the internal commands from my scripts, right? So I had a retry wait, exponential backoff, and then the name and the invoke command itself. I'm creating an array of basically everything that I don't want to give to the command that I want to run, because it's internal. Then I am adding one here, command list, and I'm adding splat as a config item, and it's empty. I'm adding it with null. It's just empty. I'm just adding an empty item. So we can go through here a bit. Let me move a bit around my code and not show all the things. Then when it's time to build up a list of commands to run, let me rephrase that. I am building a list of commands to run before I start running stuff. So I go through I read the config, and then I build up a command list. This is what I want to run. Inside the command list, I need all the items. So for instance, the splat property gets filled with everything that was in the YAML file. Now you can steal my code and use it and improve it and take all the bugs out and improve it for yourself, and that's okay. But I'm taking all the params that I've put in the YAML file that I want to use for my command and put that in the splat parameter that I just added. Then I have one little if-then thing still in there, if you spotted it, because if the item type is DBA tools hides the errors. They don't like a sea of red, so they're hiding them. Even if there are errors, you only see them as warnings. So I do need the errors. I really do. So they have a property called enable exception, and I switch that on. This is something really specific that I'm doing because I use DBA tools a lot. Might not even be needed for your situation if you're not using DBA tools. And then once I'm done there, I'm taking this hash table that I just created with all the parameters that I want to give to the command that I'm running, and I put them in my splat parameter here. Now, if I go further down, am I... a little bit further? Oh yeah, and I have it's a bit slow on scrolling today, I don't know why. I do have some magic that I do myself because I like to do it that way. If you don't configure a keep as in the config, in my config that I did, of course this is just showing you how I did it, so if you want to do something completely different, be my guest. But I'm using something called keep as, and if you don't fill it, I'll just save it as a CLI XML because I just want to use an internal PowerShell format to save it so I can use it later to export it to Excel or whatever I want to do. The other option that I've built in is saving something to an Excel sheet. The one library that I'm also using is called import Excel. I don't know if you know this library, import Excel. The most awesome function of import Excel is actually export Excel. It's brilliant, I love it. One line of code, here's some PowerShell, pipe it into export Excel. I want you to make the first line bold. I want you to auto-filter it and auto-size it and just name the tab like this and done. And if you want another tab in the Excel sheet, just write to it again, name the tab, and it will change the Excel sheet for you. Brilliant stuff. I like Excel, the import Excel library. Now, what I'm also doing here I have no idea about my timings. We could be done early. We'll see. I did this at a SQL Server conference, and I had to go really slow because SQL Server people, not PowerShell people. So I think I can go a little bit faster here, but I just might be done sooner, which it's really warm in here. Might be good to get some fresh air right after lunch, right? We shall see. Now, here's my main piece of code. Sorta. Here's the loop. I'm going through the commands and I'm running them. Now, I thought about, okay, how do I do this exponential backoff stuff? The developers that I work with, the C# guys, they use a library called Poly. If you're a developer and you do C# or you have developers in your team and they want to go to Azure, tell them to use Poly. Poly just hooks into all the stuff that you want to try in PowerShell, and when you want to build in retries, it will hook into that. So you don't have to change a lot of your code. There's no if, then things around. It will just hook into it, and you can just set up a config like, I want you to retry three times and do an exponential backoff on this command and that command. And then every time you run that command in your code, it will do that. You won't even notice as a developer. You just run the command, and it will say succeeded, and it might have tried twice. You don't know. That's really cool. I saw a bunch of developers using it for going to things like Redis cache inside Azure. Use it for the database as well. And think about what retry means in a database, right? Some things you really don't want to try twice. That might be something that you want to be careful with. But ever since the developers started using Poly for everything in Azure, errors have gone down. Because these intermediate errors that you get that just disappear after a few seconds, they happen all the time. So this Poly was really useful. I have not used it with PowerShell. I don't know if that works even. I have no idea how to hook that into PowerShell. Maybe there is a way, I don't know. So I've decided to mimic the behavior. And what I'm doing here, basically, at the top you see me go for each item in the command list. So I'm going through the commands. I want to run all these things. And then here's a simple, very simple loop for I in I less than item.retry. It's a loop. If I've said I want to retry something 5 times, here's a loop that tries this 5 times. And when I succeed, I break out of that loop. That's the thing I've chosen to use. No very complex logic to see if I need to retry something. No, just make a loop with the number of retries and break out if I succeed. That seems to work for me. I got less code. I thought, okay, less code is good. I understand in half a year what I'm doing. So if I look back at the code, so that was my thing. And what I'm doing, if error somewhere here. Yeah. If I catch an error, I put the retry on. So the retry is false, try something, catch an error, put retry on true. There's actually a whole bunch of error handling and logging in here in my production script. I've taken it out because that would take me another hour to explain what I'm doing all there. You might have your own error handling and whatnot. So I've decided to take that out. This is my main piece of, shall I call it advice, that I want to bring across. This is what I'm doing. If you can come up with a better way, let me know. But retry, and then if you catch an error, stay in the loop. And if it works, somewhere there, if not, retry. Yeah, here, it's out of the screen. Let me move. If you don't have to retry, break. That doesn't stop the code. That just breaks out of the loop. It worked, so we're done with all the logic. We can move on now. It's a bit of an anti-pattern, I think, but this works for me, right? That's the beauty of being a database guy and writing PowerShell. If I'm even in the Lion's Den, in a PowerShell conference, not sure what that was. Still have sound? Okay. I don't care if it works fine, unless I'm doing something really dangerous. And I'm sure at a PowerShell conference they will tell me. I'm fine with this. You've also seen a lot of best practices on what you need to do with your functions and make it into a module. Yeah, but if we all do that in our presentations, then we'll be here an hour before I've even gotten to my code. So this is not a module, the function is ugly, there's no error handling. But it should be there, right? You understand this, right? Make sure you apply to all the best practices. Don't just take this block of code and throw that in production. Make a nice error handling and function. So that's what I'm doing, breakout. Also, I'm logging some things, and I'm logging it to a file. I like files with logs because at least I know I have a file. Sometimes people log to databases and whatnot. I'm not always sure if the database is there because I'm the guy who runs scripts against databases, so that might be, I might be shutting it down or something. So I like stuff. I log stuff to files, and I keep the results, and I log those as well to the same directory. I create a directory with a timestamp, so I can always see the history. And I have a separate command that is scheduled that cleans up the history. Basically what SQL Agent would do for me as well. Now, a little bit up is the logic that I'm using to do the backoff and the retry. I've set some parameters that come out of the YAML file, so they've been set automatically. And the only thing I do if I have a retry await and I'm still in the retry, just sleep, start sleep. Just wait. That's what I asked, right? If I need to wait for 5 seconds, just wait for 5 seconds. That might work. So I can do a few things. Retry 3 times and wait 5 seconds. So it will try to run something, and then 2 times it will wait for 5 seconds. The first iteration of my code, I just went, if you're in this loop and you have a retry, sleep for 5 seconds. And my code took long, because I had 30 seconds, and my code took long to run the first time. I thought, wait a minute, idiot, you don't have to wait the first time. Try it first, right? I was waiting before I did anything. Not the brightest moment. But so if I'm in the retry, so not the first time, then you wait. And I have 2 different ones. I have the retry wait, where I just wait, and I have the exponential backoff, where the amount of time that I need to wait is in an array, and is based on the number of waits that I'm doing. It gets longer. You saw me do that in the ini file here. I say ini file. That's a very, very old term. This is the closest to ini files, right? We're back full circle. This looks a lot like an ini file from the old days. But there's the retry and the retry wait. So retry 3 times, retry wait 5 seconds. So I just wait 5 seconds every time. But here I have a retry 3, and I have an exponential backoff 2,10. There's 2 values in there. Why is the 2? I'm not retrying it 3 times. I'm just running it 3 times in total, I think, then. Okay. Every time I look at the code, I think, was that right? Or do I need to add another one? So retry, I'm running it 3 times in total. The first one, if it's successful, counts as the 3 times, fine. It's like if you do SQL Server and you have always on availability groups, where it says you can have the number of streams that you can have, the number of, what are they called? Secondaries. Are they called secondaries? Replicas, exactly, replicas. That confuses me all the time. If you can have 8 replicas, how many in total do you have? 9, that's my thought as well. In SQL Server land, no, it's 8 in total. The original one is also called a replica. I just, what? Every sci-fi movie I have to rewatch or something. I might be wrong about stuff. So, exponential backoff, this is an array. So, if it fails, it tries it again, waits for 2 seconds. If that fails, tries it again, waits for 10 seconds. So I'm offsetting this thing. This is, there's a little bit, just a little bit of logic in the code to do that. I'm calculating a bit here. Start sleep, back off wait. The iteration I'm going through -2, because -0 might be the one that's the first one. I don't do any waiting because that might just work. I've not tried it before. Then that one might fail. Then the -1 would be the first one. But the array is 0 based. So I do a -2. It's a bit weird. I had to this one I get it wrong all the time. All the time. I go, oh, okay, -1, go. No, that's wrong. Wait a minute, what happens? This 0 based? Okay, then that one. Okay, -2. Yeah, seems to work. And off by 1. I seem to be the person that's always off by 1 on these things. Which one was it? Oh well. So that's what I'm doing there. And then I break out of the loop when I'm done, like I said already. So if I do that in a, oh yeah, let's not forget that. The important part. Where is it? Where is it? What am I running? So what am I running? On the top you see splat is item.splat. So those are the commands that I've filtered out of the YAML file that are not internal. So all the commands that are the parameters that I just put in there, that these belong to the command that I want to run. I don't know which. in this script doesn't know what command you want to run, also doesn't know which parameters are needed. So the YAML file has the parameters and the commands. And I just say splat is item.splat. Those are the commands I want to run. I've taken them out of the YAML file. Those are all the commands, the parameters except for the internal ones. I've filtered those out. And then I go command is script block.create. And then the invoke one, the one that I had in invoke in the YAML file. And then behind it, I put @splat. Now, you need to do that because this splat uses a parameter called splat, and you have to fill it every time right before you run it. That's the trick. You fill the splat parameter, and you add the @splat. It can have any name. I've called it splat, because the function is called splatting, the technique. But it can have any name, but I just use splat, so I know what I'm doing. And then all you need to do is, where's the command? Here we go. Invoke command, script block, command. No idea what it does. That totally depends on what's in your YAML file. Put anything in there. Here's a security warning. I've seen this a couple of times when I did somebody wrote a PowerShell command that had a list of servers in a CSV and then a list of scripts that they wanted to run on a SQL server, and then scheduled it in the scheduled task under an account that was sysadmin on all the SQL servers. And then to make it easy, the list of scripts and the list of databases to run on was just shared with everyone. So all the developers and all the admins could put stuff in there. Best way to open the door ever, right? Run these scripts that are in a non-protected share on this list of servers and under really high rights, right? Everybody is SA. So just remove them all, put a script there that says drop database or shut down with no wait. And yeah, was switch on XP command shell and then format C or something. And, you can do some crazy stuff. Be careful, be careful, be careful. This is a real thing these days. I've seen the craziest attempts to break into SQL servers. 10 years ago, I got scripts this is the old days. You get a script from a developer, and you have to check it. This was our job 10 years ago. Thankfully, we don't do that anymore, but this is all automated now. You look through the script, and you don't want them to do crazy stuff. And I had a developer that put in the bottom, give me SA rights, right? A whole bunch of create table, add something, store procedures, big script, and all the way in the bottom, make me SA, make me sysadmin. Like, what are you doing, dude? Then he gave me a new script, and it was gone. And I figured out later, he did have SA rights. And it turns out that he gave me a Unicode file and used some Unicode in the bottom that made it invisible. But Management Studio would still run it. So now this is, if you ever see a DBA and you gave them a script and they have to check, and they do Control A and then scroll, because they select everything, because then you can see the hidden stuff. 10 years ago, you don't fool us anymore. Anyway, where was I? So that's the main trick. You go from any file, demo YAML? YAML file, I should say YAML file, right? You see these more often, Visual Studio or Azure DevOps. Are we getting used to the name? Azure DevOps is using this as well. AppVeyor, all these tools use it. I see it more and more. You go from this, a config file, to give it to the PowerShell that runs it without changing the PowerShell all the time if you come up with a new command. This PowerShell that you've just seen will just run this, invoke DBA SQL query, and put these 3 in as parameters, and we'll retry it according to this logic that you've seen here. And it will run the commands, collect the commands, make a directory, put the log in there, put the results in there. And if I say keep as Excel, it will save them as Excel sheets with the export Excel option. Really cool. I can also say keep And I have database list and table list here because I have name table list and their name database list. I want to keep them, both of them. If I have something that just does some preparing or something, install a script and then run the script, I don't need to keep the result from installing the script. I only want to keep the result from running the script. So I can put a keep in here, only keep these. If I put nothing in, it keeps everything. If I put something in, it filters everything out except for this and keeps that. Did I have a big plan up front? No, I just kept tinkering with it until it worked and did what I liked it to do. Like, oh, no, I'm keeping everything. I don't need these results. Okay, let's filter that out. Step by step, just go through it. And I can mail stuff, but I really love the Excel. Show you the Excel. It's here. Run stuff, bottom. Ooh, not too far. Here in the middle. Really simple. Take the result, pipe it into export Excel, put the path there, and then there's a worksheet name that you have to give, so you have some tabs. Let me zoom that again because that, don't change the code. And then go freeze top row, bold top row, auto filter, auto size. Brilliant thing, love that thing. Use it for a lot of, there's a guy in SQL Server land called Glenn Berry. He has a script, and that has 80 SQL scripts or something. And on his website, he has, if you want to run this on a server, here's an empty Excel sheet with all the tabs, and please run them one at a time, because you can't run them all, because some of them are per database, and some you need to run in master. And then in Management Studio, grab the result and paste them in the right location in the Excel sheet. This is like 80 or 90 times, depending on how many databases you have. Could be hundreds of times. And then you need to do it per server. DBA Tools does this for you. Invoke DBA SQL. Invoke DBA, what was it? What is that?
It's query now.
No, the Glenn Berry. Invoke DBA, I wrote it myself. That was mine. I forgot the name. I'm an idiot. Invoke DBA diagnostic query, and you pipe it to export DBA diagnostic query, type Excel, and it will just spit out an Excel sheet per instance and an Excel sheet per database with all the queries. And if you have query plans and SQL text from your maximum, there's scripts in there that do the slowest queries and the query plans. Those will be saved as separate files, so you can open them up in Management Studio if you look at them a lot. And it uses this library as well. Really useful. And you just pipe some PowerShell object to it, and it appears in an Excel sheet. Now, let's see, where am I? If I go to, C code, this one, run to something that I ran earlier. That's all it does. So every time I run it, this comes out. For me, I like the fact that it collects things in Excel, but that's not the main reason I do it. Especially in Azure, this retry logic saved me. For at night when I need to copy the production database into a temp. So first drop the copy of last night, then copy the production database to the new, they call it data warehouse. It's not really, but it's a reporting thing. Let's call it the reporting server. So you offload the reports to the copy of yesterday. Cheap way of not touching your production server with silly queries. And then I need to do some re-indexing. I need different indexes for the reports, and I need some other stuff. And there's some pre-configured reports that I need to refresh. So I need to call some stored procedures. So this is like a 20-step plan. And all of them are in one of these config files, just 20 steps. And they all have the exponential back-off retry logic. And it saved me a lot on the copy off, for instance, where the copy just works for an hour and it just says no. and then it refuses to work for another 20 minutes. So and it's at night, so I don't care. So my exponential backoff on that command is retry it 3 times or two times, and the first wait is 20 minutes. If it fails, do nothing for 20 minutes, retry it again. If that fails, wait for an hour, try it again. And that saved me so much time with the monitoring system where they call you up at night. It went from almost every week where that command just fails, to once in the last half year, where even the hour was not enough. I'm just going to build in 3 hours as a next step. Okay, 3 hours. Give it another try until it's morning, and then we'll declare it a failure. I don't care. But that saved me a lot. And if you work in Azure, you're going to not just see this on Azure SQL DB, but on almost anything in Azure, can have these things disappearing on you, where you have to retry and wait a bit. It's a bit strange, but that's how it works, and it saved me a lot. So, having said that, we are not even that early. So, promised you 3 more slides, didn't I? Let's do that. Did I put the... sorry. I run an event as well. It's called the SQL Saturday in Holland. And 650 people are going to show up on Saturday in Holland. And I know for a fact that buying coffee for 600 of your best friends, or 70 in this case, doesn't matter, is not free at all. Or you paid a little entrance fee, I think. But in the middle of London, in a building like this, probably not free. Sponsors make this work. Without it, you would have to pay a lot more than you did now. So thank these guys when you see them show some interest in their stuff. They are just people like us, and they have made a product, and they want to show it to you. So first thing that you have to, it was hard to find something funny about YAML, but first thing that I showed that really helped me figuring this out and make it in such a way that I don't have to tinker with my PowerShell script all the time is have a config in a YAML file. YAML keeps surprising me. I still run into little tweaks where I go, okay, it didn't get this. Maybe if I put it like that, and it takes a bit of time. Don't dismiss it right away. If you run into some errors, you may have a space too much, or you may do something that doesn't work in a YAML file. You'll find out. There's good documentation on it. There's lots and lots of samples on it. Once you get a hang of it, don't overdo the structure. Keep it simple. YAML is going to help you there. Personally, I like it way more than JSON, handmade JSON. Who can do that? Do you know offhand where the accolades go in the comments? I don't. XML, yeah. So second one, hash tables. Yeah, no. Like I said, never been in a coffee shop. Now, hash tables, you find them PS custom object and all these things. The more than arrays that you find in PowerShell all the time are really useful. Hash tables are important in PowerShell. I always have to tinker with them because I get them wrong, and there's many ways to create them, old ways and new ways, and different modern ways that you can create them. And sometimes the command I run fails, and I think, why do you not want to make a hash table? Or why does it look like just a name-value pair right now? I don't understand what I did wrong. Or why is it not in order? Because a normal hash table is not ordered, which is interesting if you're building a command list, right? Do this, then do that, then do that. And it didn't do that in the order I said it would needed. Like create a copy of and then drop the previous one. Doesn't work. So there's things that you have to keep in mind. Just remember that you have to sometimes tinker with them, and there's many ways, and even multiple best practices that I've seen that are current. But hash tables are important. And the last one, splatting. Splatting is a beautiful technique that hides a lot of the complexity from the commands. If you have a lot of parameters behind your command, they run out of the screen. They can be different for like the SQL command. Does the query come from a query or from a parameter or come from a file? Then you have 2 different lines, and it will. You have to do if, then else, and it will save you a lot of hassle with rewriting your code the whole time if you're figuring out that you have yet another option to put in there. So I really like Splatting to keep your code concise, readable. I like this option. With that, we have 5 minutes left. Does anyone want a microphone to be thrown at them? Anyone have any questions? All right, it is right after lunch. It's really warm in this room. Shall we get some fresh air? All right, have a great day, guys. I hope this was useful. Thank you.